Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. We have never dealt with a federal agency that lies as flagrantly and as aggressively about literal life and death situations as Donald Trump and Kristi Noem's Department of Homeland Security. We, of course, as Americans, all saw this play out with the killing of Renee Good last month. You might remember Kristi Noem's false version of events issued right after the fatal shooting.
The officer was hit by the vehicle. She hit him. He went to the hospital. A doctor did treat him.
Federal agents are roaming the streets of Minneapolis in masks. They are operating without uniforms. They are shooting citizens in broad daylight. They are lying about why they are there. This is a story of a government using its power to punish its own people. This is a story of legal accountability. It is time to look at the evidence. It is time to look at the law. Here, play this clip.
The mental scars will always be there as a reminder of the time my own government attempted to execute me, and when they fell, they chose to vilify me. I am Renee Good. I am Alex Pretti. I am Silverio Villegas Gonzalez. I am Keith Porter. They should all be here today. I know each of them would trade my bullet wounds a lifetime of mental distress and a heartbeat to be able to be back with their loved ones this afternoon.
Again, this woman was arrested after they shot her a bunch of times. She had to get herself to a hospital, and they came into the hospital and were impatient, the doctors there said, to get her out of there so that they could take her to detention. Now, this has been this administration's MO from the beginning. I mean, remember this one. These things sort of come, they enter the news cycle, and they go away, and then we sort of lose track of them. Remember this? We covered on this show that really big, flashy Chicago raid from last year. It looked like they were like...
The Trump administration claims that Operation Metro Surge is a necessary law enforcement response to fight massive fraud in Minnesota. They claim their agents are targeting the worst of the worst criminals. They claim their use of deadly force has been justified by domestic terrorism. These are lies. The evidence proves that these claims are false. The administration is using law enforcement as a weapon of political retaliation. Here, play this clip.
You know, it's clearly established law that a vehicle driven by a person and used to harm someone is a deadly weapon. This domestic act of terrorism to use your vehicle to try to kill law enforcement officers is going to stop. And I'm asking the Department of Justice to prosecute it as domestic terrorism because it's clear that it's being coordinated. People are being trained and told how to use their vehicles to impede law enforcement operations and then to run over anybody who gets in their way. We had law enforcement officers that were out there doing an enforcement action. And a vehicle got stuck in the snow, and so they had called for other people to come and help them get that vehicle out. Those officers were trying to free the vehicle when the harassment started, when the protesters were out there impeding their vehicles and preventing them from leaving the scene.
We must define the lie. Donald Trump and Kristi Noem have repeatedly claimed that Minnesota is a hub of corruption and fraud. Trump stated on January 9, 2026, that Minnesota is corrupt and crooked because it reported election results he did not like. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has claimed that DHS surged agents to Minneapolis to arrest murderers, rapists, and gang members. She called the actions of a citizen killed by ICE an act of domestic terrorism. These specific claims are the foundation of a narrative designed to justify a militarized occupation of a domestic American city. The forensic evidence dismantles this narrative. We begin with the deployment itself. The administration claims to have deployed over 2,000 DHS agents to the Twin Cities. This number exceeds the combined strength of the Minneapolis and St. Paul police departments. The stated objective is to fight fraud related to the Feeding Our Future program. However, that fraud case was a partnership between state and federal resources that began in 2021. It involved document reviews and standard investigative techniques. It did not require 2,000 agents in riot gear. Data shows that only 1.5% of Minnesota's population are non-citizens without legal status. This is less than half the national average. There is no data to support the need for the largest immigration operation in history in this specific location. We look at the specific instances of violence. On January 7th, 2026, an ICE agent shot and killed Renee Good. Kristi Noem claimed Good hit an officer with her vehicle and called it domestic terrorism. Forensic video evidence proves this was a fabrication. Here, play this clip.
Of course, we all saw the video of Renee Good getting shot, multiple videos, in fact, from multiple angles. We could see that Noem's version of events were an obvious fabrication. She was just lying about what happened. And Renee Good was not some sort of Antifa super soldier out to murder federal agents, to drive over anybody who got in her way. She was a mom driving a Honda Pilot with stuffed animals in the glove box, who used her very last words on this earth to assure the agent who would go on to kill her, quote, "I'm not mad at you."
Renee Good was a mother driving a Honda Pilot. She had stuffed animals in her glove box. Her final words were to assure the agent she was not mad at him. She did not commit an act of terrorism. On January 24th, 2026, a Border Patrol officer shot and killed Alex Pretti. The administration claimed Pretti was an assassin who approached officers with a handgun. Video evidence proves this was a lie. Pretti was an intensive care unit nurse. He was carrying a firearm legally. The gun was removed from him before he was shot. He was lying prone on all fours when he was executed at point-blank range. The evidence of misconduct extends to daily operations. DHS agents have been observed wearing masks to conceal their identities. This is a violation of Minnesota state law. Agents have been caught swapping license plates on unmarked vehicles. This is also a violation of Minnesota law. Agents have entered private businesses like the restaurant Ola Arepa without judicial warrants. When asked for a warrant, they told employees they did not need one. This is a direct violation of constitutional protections against unlawful search and seizure. Here, play this clip.
If ICE is willing to stop the roving patrols, if they're willing to go to a judge before they go into someone's home, if they're willing to take off their masks, put their identification out, lower the qualified immunity that they have that makes them think that they're invincible, and no longer target people based on where they work and the accents they speak, which they've admitted to doing in court, then I'm open-minded to reshaping ICE. But that is nowhere near what Donald Trump and Kristi Noem and J.D. Vance and Stephen Miller want. They want to continue to bring terror to our community. I see it, Anna, as ICE is in the streets killing nurses and moms. So cutting their funding, how is that even a question? That is the very least that we can do.
Agents have engaged in blatant racial profiling. In one instance, agents approached 4 public works employees. They demanded identification from the 3 non-white employees. They did not question the 4th employee, who was white. Agents have also detained U.S. citizens, including members of the Oglala Sioux tribe and a local pastor. The pastor was released only after an agent told him he was white and wouldn't be fun to detain. This is an analysis of power and control. This operation is not about law enforcement. It is about political punishment. The administration has targeted Minnesota because its leaders are political opponents. Trump has called Governor Tim Walz a dangerously liberal extremist. He called Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey a fool. The administration has labeled them sanctuary politicians to justify federal intervention. This is a pattern of targeting Democrat-led jurisdictions. The administration attempted to mobilize troops in California, Illinois, and Oregon. When courts blocked those moves, they pivoted to Minnesota. They are using federal agencies to provoke community outrage. They want to sow fear and inflict emotional distress on populations they perceive as political enemies. They are even targeting funding for projects in blue states as part of a broader strategy of economic coercion. The strongest defense argument from the administration is that federal immigration authority is supreme. They argue they have the absolute right to enforce federal law anywhere in the country. They argue that the Feeding Our Future fraud justifies a massive federal presence to protect taxpayer dollars. We must dismantle these arguments using the law. The 10th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution reserves police powers to the states. The Supreme Court has ruled that the federal government cannot command state officers to administer federal programs. The administration is attempting to force Minnesota to choose between its own laws or a federal occupation. This is unconstitutional coercion. Furthermore, the claim of fighting fraud is a pretext. Fraud investigations are conducted through audits and subpoenas. They are not conducted by agents in military fatigues firing pepper spray at high school students. The administration has revoked long-standing sensitive locations policies that protected schools and hospitals. This revocation was done without a rational basis. It is therefore arbitrary and capricious under the Administrative Procedure Act. Let us provide a legal education in plain English. There is a critical difference between an administrative warrant and a judicial warrant. An administrative warrant is an internal DHS document. It is signed by an immigration official. It does not give an agent the legal authority to forcibly enter a private home. Only a judicial warrant, signed by a neutral judge, provides that authority. The Trump administration has issued internal memos claiming they can use force to enter homes based only on administrative warrants. This is a direct collision with the Fourth Amendment. Additionally, The Border Patrol has the power to conduct warrantless searches within 100 miles of an external boundary. Minneapolis and St. Paul are more than 200 miles from the nearest international border. The agents operating there are acting outside of their statutory jurisdiction. They are performing ultra vires executive actions. They are violating the very laws they are sworn to uphold. My professional judgment is that the leadership of the Department of Homeland Security is unfit. Secretary Kristi Noem has demonstrated a total lack of regard for the truth. She has used her office to spread propaganda and false narratives about the deaths of American citizens. She has failed to rein in rogue elements within her agency. Under her watch, agents have developed a culture of invincibility. They operate with only 47 hours of training. For comparison, a nail technician often requires 400 hours of training. This lack of training has resulted in the deaths of Renee and Alex Pretti. It has resulted in agents shooting through closed front doors into bedrooms where children sleep. The administration is not running a law enforcement agency. They are running a political retribution force. The expert authority stack is clear. Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison has filed a comprehensive federal lawsuit. He is joined by the city attorneys of Minneapolis and St. Paul. They are asserting state sovereignty under the 10th Amendment. Senator Chris Murphy, the top Democrat on the Homeland Security Subcommittee, has stated that Congress cannot fund a department that is murdering American citizens. Senator Jackie Rosen and Senator Catherine Cortez Masto have both stated that the abuses of power by ICE are un-American. Even some Republicans are calling for accountability. Senator Bill Cassidy has stated that the credibility of DHS is at stake and has called for a full investigation. These are not just partisan complaints. These are the voices of officials who recognize a fundamental breakdown in the rule of law. Institutional accountability has failed at the executive level. The Department of Justice has signaled that it may not fully investigate these killings. It has worked to delay the release of information. Because the executive branch will not police itself, the responsibility has shifted to the courts and to Congress. A federal judge in Minnesota has already expressed exasperation with the administration's refusal to follow court orders. In Congress, Democrats have drawn a line in the sand. They are threatening to block all funding for the Department of Homeland Security unless there is real accountability. They are demanding an end to roving patrols. They are demanding that agents unmask and identify themselves. They are demanding the use of judicial warrants for all home entries. The procedural consequences are imminent. There is a high probability of a partial government shutdown. If the DHS funding bill is not separated or amended, the department will run out of money. This would impact FEMA, the TSA, and the Coast Guard. In the courts, the state of Minnesota is seeking a permanent injunction. They are asking a judge to prohibit agents from using excessive force. They are asking a judge to force agents to wear visible identification. They are asking the court to declare the entire surge unconstitutional. If the court rules in favor of the state, the federal government will be legally barred from continuing these tactics in Minnesota. This is the state of our union. Federal agents are using the tools of national security to settle political scores. They are operating in the shadows of masks and unmarked plates. They are taking lives and then lying to the families of the dead. The institutions of our democracy are now being tested. The courts are being asked to intervene. Congress is being asked to pull the plug on funding. The people of Minnesota are organizing to observe and record every move these agents make. This is not a matter of policy debate. This is a matter of the law. The law says that the federal government cannot occupy a state to punish its voters. The law says that an agent cannot shoot a prone man and call him an assassin. The law says that the truth matters. We are now waiting for the institutions of justice to enforce that law. The administration's response to this pressure has been a cynical public relations shift. Tom Homan announced a drawdown of 700 agents. Trump claimed he would use a softer touch. But 2,000 agents remain on the ground. This is more than 10 times the normal number of agents for the region. They are still operating under the same lack of training. They are still operating under the same quotas that require them to find thousands of people to arrest every day. They cannot meet those quotas by only targeting criminals. They must target ordinary people. They must target people at work. They must target people at the grocery store. They must target people at school. The cost to the community is measurable. Local businesses have reported revenue losses of 50 to 80%. Customers are afraid to shop because they see masked agents in the parking lots. Schools have been forced to close. Local police departments are being forced to spend millions of dollars in overtime just to keep the peace. The Minneapolis Police Department alone estimated costs of over $2 million in a single weekend. Officers are being pulled away from investigating real crimes to respond to the chaos created by federal agents. The mental health of local law enforcement is suffering. They are being associated with the violence of the federal surge. This is a failure of leadership at the highest levels of the American government. It is a violation of the constitutional contract between the federal government and the states. The evidence is on the screen. The law is in the books. The accountability is coming in the courtrooms and in the halls of Congress. The people of Minnesota have already stood up. Now the rest of the country's institutions must do the same. This is the only way to restore the rule of law. This is the only way to ensure that no more American citizens are killed by their own government on the streets of their own cities. The procedural path forward is narrow. The deadline for funding is approaching. The lawsuit from the Attorney General is moving through the district court. These are the only mechanisms left to stop a lawless executive. The administration has shown that it will not stop on its own. It has shown that it will continue to lie about its actions. It has shown that it will continue to use force against peaceful observers. The only answer is a legal one. The only answer is a procedural one. The surge must be defunded. The surge must be enjoined. The agents must be unmasked. The law must be followed. We have seen the reports of how these agents operate. We have seen them drag a pregnant woman across a frozen road. We have seen them tackle a man for asking if they were ICE. We have seen them point guns at pastors. We have seen them shoot through doors near portable cribs. This is the reality of Operation Metro Surge. This is the reality that Donald Trump and Kristi Noem are trying to hide behind a narrative of fighting fraud. But the narrative is falling apart. The witnesses are speaking. The videos are playing. The truth is coming out. And the truth is that this operation is a criminal abuse of power. The institutions of the federal government are currently being used to violate the civil liberties of Americans. This is not speculation. This is the testimony of victims like Marimar Martinez. She was shot 5 times and then charged with a crime to cover up the shooting. The charges were only dropped when the government's narrative fell apart in discovery. This is the same pattern we see in Minnesota. The government shoots first, lies second, and then uses the legal system to vilify the victim. It is a system of state-sponsored violence and deception. It is a system that must be dismantled by the very laws it claims to serve. The accountability stack is growing. The number of people trained as constitutional observers is increasing. The number of local officials using their powers to thwart these tactics is increasing. The pressure on the administration is working, as evidenced by the drawdown. But a partial drawdown is not justice. A softer touch is not the rule of law. Justice is the removal of lawless agents. Justice is the prosecution of those who have killed citizens without cause. Justice is the restoration of the 10th Amendment. We are watching a crisis of fitness. A government that cannot tell the truth about why it is killing its citizens is not a fit government. A secretary who participates in propagandized raids while her agents are under investigation for murder is not a fit secretary. This is a moment of profound consequence for the American Republic. The actions taken in the next 2 weeks will determine if the federal government is still bound by the Constitution. It will determine if the states still have the power to protect their people. It will determine if the truth still has a place in our political discourse. This is a prosecutorial analysis of the facts. The claim is fraud. The evidence is retaliation. The law is the 10th Amendment and the APA. The accountability is the budget and the courts. We will continue to follow the evidence. We will continue to follow the law. And we will continue to hold the powerful to account for the lies they tell and the lives they take.
You know, it's clearly established law that a vehicle driven by a person and used to harm someone is a deadly weapon. This domestic act of terrorism to use your vehicle to try to kill law enforcement officers is going to stop. And I'm asking the Department of Justice to prosecute it as domestic terrorism because it's clear that it's being coordinated. People are being trained and told how to use their vehicles to impede law enforcement operations and then to run over anybody who gets in their way. We had law enforcement officers that were out there doing an enforcement action. And a vehicle got stuck in the snow, and so they had called for other people to come and help them get that vehicle out. Those officers were trying to free the vehicle when the harassment started, when the protesters were out there impeding their vehicles and preventing them from leaving the scene.